6-year-old Zoe Williams stood frozen as the roomful of wealthy guests laughed at her. Billionaire Blake Harrison smirked, waving the French contract. "Sure, little girl," he sneered. Seconds later, his smile vanished as perfect French flowed from her lips. The contract revealed his darkest secret. Before we dive into this incredible story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button if you believe every child deserves respect, regardless of their background, and subscribe to catch more stories that will change how you see the world. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Zoe Williams was extraordinary in ways no one bothered to notice. At 6 years old, she already spoke 4 languages, fluently read at a high school level, and possessed a memory that retained everything she encountered. Her mother, Maya Williams, worked as a live-in maid for the prestigious Harrington family in their sprawling Boston mansion, a position she had held for 8 years since immigrating from Haiti after her husband died in the devastating earthquake. The Harringtons tolerated Maya, bringing Zoe to work during school breaks and weekends when childcare fell through, but only under strict conditions. Zoe must remain silent, invisible, and confined to the servants' quarters. Victoria Harrington, the lady of the house, made no attempt to hide her disdain for the child, referring to Zoe as that little disruption whenever she caught glimpses of her. The Harrington children, teenagers Brittany and Connor, either ignored Zoe completely or worse, treated her as a prop in their games of pretend ordering her around as they mimicked their parents' treatment of the household staff. The family never once asked about Zoe's education or interests, assuming she was as simple as they believed her mother to be. What they failed to see was Maya Williams was college-educated in Haiti before political turmoil and natural disaster forced her to flee with nothing but her infant daughter. Unable to get her credentials recognized in America and facing immediate financial pressure, she had taken the first job available. Every night, in their tiny room off the kitchen, Maya taught Zoe everything she knew, supplementing with books borrowed from the local library. Zoe absorbed languages like a sponge, mastering English and Spanish alongside her native French and Haitian Creole. By age 4, she was teaching herself Italian through children's books. Maya worried constantly about providing Zoe with opportunities worthy of her gifts. They could barely afford the rent on their tiny apartment in Roxbury, where they stayed on Maya's days off, let alone private schools or enrichment programs. The public school Zoe attended was underfunded and overcrowded with teachers who either didn't notice her abilities or didn't have resources to nurture them. Some even seemed uncomfortable with a young black girl who corrected their pronunciation of foreign words or finished reading assignments meant for children twice her age. When Zoe tried showing her kindergarten teacher that she could already multiply numbers, she was told to stop showing off and focus on coloring inside the lines like the other children. Parents complained when Zoe was moved ahead in reading groups, suggesting she must be cheating somehow. On particularly difficult days at school, Maya would smuggle Zoe into the mansion's vast library during the family's absence. There, Zoe would lose herself in leather-bound classics, historical atlases, and language dictionaries, carefully returning each book to its exact position before they left. The Harringtons, who rarely entered the library themselves, never noticed the worn pages or the occasional bookmark mistakenly left behind. Over time, Zoe learned to make herself smaller, quieter, and less noticeable both at school and at the mansion. She saved her questions and observations for her mother, who encouraged her brilliance in private while teaching her the harsh reality that their world would rarely celebrate it. The mansion was particularly busy this week as the Harringtons prepared to host an exclusive business dinner for Blake Harrison, the 42-year-old tech billionaire founder of Harrison Global Innovations. Victoria Harrington had been especially demanding, changing the menu 3 times and requiring the entire house to be cleaned twice over. Maya worked 18-hour days while Zoe stayed with an elderly neighbor who often fell asleep, leaving the child to entertain herself with books and online language tutorials on their shared tablet. The night before the dinner, Maya received a call that her neighbor had fallen ill. With no alternative childcare and unable to miss work before such an important event, Maya reluctantly decided to bring Zoe with her planning, to keep her out of sight in their room. "Remember, Zoe," Maya whispered as they entered through the service entrance at dawn today, "you must be completely invisible. Mr. Harrison is very important to the Harringtons and Mrs. Harrington will be more nervous than usual. If anyone sees you, we could both lose everything." Zoe nodded solemnly, clutching her backpack filled with books. She understood the stakes better than any 6-year-old should have to. The Harrington mansion transformed that evening into a glittering showcase of wealth and privilege. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across the marble foyer, as catering staff in crisp black uniforms circulated with trays of champagne and canapés. Maya worked frantically in the kitchen, her hair pulled back tightly beneath a black cap, her uniform freshly pressed, despite having been up since 4 that morning. In the servants' quarters, Zoe sat cross-legged on their narrow bed, reading quietly with headphones playing classical music to block the sounds of the party. The child had promised to stay put, understanding her mother's job depended on her invisibility. Blake Harrison arrived fashionably late, stepping from his chauffeured Bentley with the casual arrogance of a man accustomed to making others wait. At 42, he cut an impressive figure in his tailored charcoal suit, his dark blonde hair artfully styled to disguise early thinning, his smile practiced and camera-ready. He was trailed by 2 assistants who carried sleek leather portfolios and managed his schedule down to the minute. Charles Victoria Harrison boomed air, kissing Mrs. Harrington and firmly shaking her husband's hand. "Stunning place, absolutely stunning. Reminds me of my summer home in the Hamptons, though I think yours might actually be larger." The Harringtons beamed at the comparison, ushering their prized guest into the grand salon where 20 of Boston's elite waited to bask in the presence of a man whose net worth exceeded the combined value of everyone else in the presence of a man whose net worth exceeded the combined value of everyone else in the praised room. Harrison was known for his ruthless business acumen, having built his tech empire from a college startup to a global powerhouse in just 15 years. His company specialized in communication technology and had recently expanded into international markets with a particular focus on European acquisitions. The real purpose of tonight's gathering, beyond social posturing, was to finalize his company's acquisition of a struggling French tech firm with revolutionary security software. The dinner progressed with the predictable rhythm of high society gatherings, exquisite food, largely ignored in favor of social jockeying wine, flowing more freely as the evening advanced, conversation dominated by those with the most money or social standing. In the kitchen, disaster struck when one of the servers spilled sauce on Victoria Harrington's imported rug. While the cleaning frenzy ensued, Zoe, growing restless in the tiny room and hearing the commotion, slipped out to find her mother. The child navigated the service corridors, silently practiced in the art of moving through spaces without being seen. Finding the kitchen in chaos and her mother nowhere in sight, Zoe's curiosity pulled her toward the sounds of the dinner party. She crept to the threshold of the dining room, peeking through a crack in the door just as the conversation shifted to business. "The acquisition documents are ready," Harrison was saying, opening one of the portfolios his assistant handed him. "Everything's prepared except for this technical addendum. Our usual translator canceled last minute, and the French firm insists this particular section remain in French for legal reasons." He extracted a document and frowned at it. "Anyone here speak decent French?" "My college classes are a bit too rusty for legal terminology." The room fell awkwardly silent. These were people who vacationed in Paris and sent their children to Swiss boarding schools, yet none possessed functional fluency in the language they claimed to appreciate. Charles Harrington cleared his throat. "Surely someone on your staff could handle this tomorrow, Blake. Why rush tonight?" Harrison's expression hardened slightly. "Because the competing offer expires at midnight Paris time, which is," he checked his watch, "about 4 hours from now. If we don't lock this down tonight, Goldman's group will snatch it up by morning." He glanced around the table, his smile turning sharp. "Come on, I'm offering a 3% commission to anyone who can translate this correctly. That's roughly $6 million for reading a few pages." The silence deepened. Victoria Harrington tittered nervously. "Perhaps one of the staff speaks French. The caterer might have someone," or her voice trailed off, as she realized suggesting the help might be more educated than her guests was a social faux pas. "Maybe the maid," someone murmured, followed by uncomfortable laughter. "Aren't many of them from Haiti or those places Zoe, still watching from the doorway, felt a surge of indignation. She recognized the dismissive tone, had heard it directed at her mother too many times. Before she could stop herself, she pushed the door open and stepped into the room of startled adults. "I can read French," she said, clearly, her small voice carrying across the sudden silence. 24 pairs of eyes turned to stare at her expressions, ranging from shock to amusement to outrage. Maya, returning to the kitchen at that moment, saw her daughter enter the dining room and froze in horror. "Well, well," Harrison laughed, his tone patronizing. "And who might you be, little one?" "I'm Zoe Williams," she replied, standing straight despite her racing heart. "My mother works here. I can translate your document." The table erupted in laughter. Victoria Harrington's face flushed crimson with humiliation. "Maya," she shouted, "come get your child immediately." Maya rushed forward, apologizing profusely, reaching for Zoe's arm. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Harrington, Mr. Harrison." She knows better than to interrupt. Harrison held up his hand, still smiling condescendingly. "No, wait. This is amusing. Let's see what the child thinks she can do." He held out the document. "Go ahead, little girl. Show us your French." He winked at the other guests, preparing them for the entertainment of a child's gibberish. Maya stood paralyzed, one hand on Zoe's shoulder, knowing any outcome would be disastrous. Zoe took the document with steady hands and began to read, her French pronunciation flawless, her voice confident. Section 3,4 propriété intellectuelle et transfert de technologie. En acceptant les termes de cette acquisition, système de sécurité Laval transfère irrévocablement tous les brevets existants et en instance ainsi que les technologies propriétaires suivantes à Harrison Global Innovations. She continued without hesitation, translating complex legal and technical terminology with precision. As she read, the amused smiles around the table slowly faded, replaced by expressions of disbelief. Harrison's face transformed most dramatically, shifting from condescending amusement to shock, then to something darker, as Zoe reached a particular section. The backdoor access protocols will be transferred with the encryption keys, allowing full surveillance capabilities of all client systems without detection or notification requirements, as mandated in Section 2.1 of the User Agreement. She paused, looking up with innocent confusion. "This says you'd be spying on people who buy your security software. Is that right?" The room fell into stunned silence. Harrison snatched the document from her hands, his face now ashen. "That's quite enough," he snapped. "Obviously someone has coached this child as some kind of prank." He turned to Maya, eyes cold. "You put her up to this, didn't you? How did you get access to these documents beforehand?" Maya, trembling now, shook her head. "No, sir. I've never seen those papers before. Zoe she teaches herself things. She's always been good with languages." Victoria Harrington stood abruptly. "This is completely unacceptable." "Maya, take your daughter and wait in my office. Charles, please show our guests to the drawing room for dessert while I deal with this situation." As Maya quickly led Zoe away, the child heard Blake Harrison demanding to know who had leaked confidential information to the help. The dining room erupted into chaos behind them, with accusations flying and Harrison threatening lawsuits. In Victoria Harrington's office, Maya knelt before her daughter, tears streaming down her face. "Zoe, what were you thinking? You know you weren't supposed to leave the room." Zoe's eyes were wide with confusion. "But Mama, they were making fun of you, and I really do know French. I didn't do anything wrong." Maya pulled her daughter close, knowing their lives were about to change irrevocably. "It doesn't matter if you did something wrong. In this world, people like us aren't allowed to be right." Maya Williams stared at the termination letter in her trembling hands, the words blurring through her tears. After 8 years of impeccable service, Victoria Harrington had fired her without reference for bringing disruptive elements into a private business function and failure to maintain appropriate boundaries. The letter even suggested possible legal action for confidentiality breaches, though it stopped short of actual accusations. Maya and Zoe had been given 30 minutes to pack their belongings and vacate the premises, with a security guard watching to ensure they took nothing that wasn't theirs. Now they sat on a bench at the bus stop 3 blocks from the mansion, surrounded by hastily packed duffel bags, the night air chilling them through their light jackets. "I'm sorry," Mama Zoe whispered, her small shoulders hunched with the weight of adult consequences. "I didn't mean to make the bad man angry." Maya pulled her daughter close, kissing the top of her head. "This isn't your fault, Zoe. You did nothing wrong. That man, Mr. Harrison, he was embarrassed because you're smarter than him, that's all." But as they boarded the late-night bus to their Roxbury apartment, Maya couldn't suppress her fear. The Harrington position had provided housing 5 days a week and steady income that covered their small apartment for days off. Without it, they had savings to last perhaps 3 weeks before homelessness became a real threat. The apartment felt foreign after spending so much time at the mansion. Small and shabby, yes, but it was theirs, filled with Zoe's drawings and their modest collection of books. Maya made tea with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, then called everyone she knew to ask about job opportunities. By morning, she had left messages with 12 potential employers. By afternoon, she had received 8 rejections. By evening, she understood the pattern. Someone was making calls, ensuring doors remained closed to her. Meanwhile, in his penthouse suite at the Mandarin Oriental, Boston, Blake Harrison poured himself a third scotch, the French contract spread before him on his desk. The acquisition had been temporarily paused after last night's disaster, his legal team scrambling to rewrite sections that had been exposed. Harrison couldn't shake the image of the little girl reading his confidential documents with perfect comprehension, revealing surveillance capabilities his PR team had worked diligently to conceal from the public. His company's security software, marketed as protection for users, contained deliberate backdoors, allowing his team to access client data. This feature, disclosed only in deliberately obscure language in the French technical addendum, was central to the company's secondary revenue stream, selling aggregate user data to advertisers and occasionally government agencies. The child had not only translated the text, but had innocently highlighted its most damning implications. How had she done it? Harrison had been convinced it was corporate espionage, someone using the maid's child as an unwitting tool to embarrass him publicly. But his extensive background check on Maya Williams revealed nothing suspicious: a Haitian immigrant, with a clean record, no connections to his competitors, no unusual financial activity. Just a single mother working multiple jobs to support her daughter. And what about the child? His investigators reported that Zoe attended an underfunded public elementary school where she was considered bright but disruptive. No special language programs, no connections to anyone in the tech or business worlds. Her teacher noted she sometimes corrected the Spanish teacher's pronunciation, but attributed it to her Caribbean background. Nothing explained her ability to read and translate complex French legal terminology. Harrison's phone buzzed with a text from his PR director's story getting traction online. Social media picking up "Billionaire embarrassed by Maid's genius daughter angle. Needs statement as soon as possible." He cursed, tossing the phone aside. The last thing he needed was public attention on that child, and by extension on what she had revealed about his company's practices. He needed to contain this situation quickly. Do you believe what happened to Maya and Zoe was fair? Comment number 1. If you think they deserved better treatment, or number 2, if you think Maya should have kept Zoe away from the party at all costs. Like this video if you've ever witnessed someone being underestimated based on their appearance or background. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about unexpected talent and the challenges faced by those society overlooks. How would you feel if your job and home were suddenly taken away because your child demonstrated extraordinary abilities? And what do you think Blake Harrison will do now that his company's secret surveillance practices have been exposed by a 6-year-old girl? Let's continue with what happened next in this incredible story. 5 days after being fired, Maya Williams sat across from yet another skeptical hiring manager, this time at a downtown hotel. "Your references from before the Harrington position are excellent, Mrs. Williams. But I'm concerned about why you left your last employment so suddenly. Mrs. Harrington is quite influential in Boston social circles." The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. "There are rumors." Maya straightened her spine, the practiced explanation ready on her lips. There was a misunderstanding involving my daughter. I'd prefer not to discuss it as it involves a minor. The manager's expression hardened. I'm afraid that without a clear explanation or a reference from your most recent employer of 8 years, we cannot proceed with your application. We service high-profile clients who expect complete discretion and reliability. Another door closed. Maya left the hotel, checking her phone to find 3 new voicemails from her landlord about the rent now 8 days overdue. She'd applied for emergency assistance but was waiting for an appointment next week. As she waited for the bus, a black luxury SUV pulled alongside the curb. The tinted window lowered to reveal Blake Harrison's face. "Mrs. Williams, please a moment of your time." Maya's first instinct was to walk away, but desperation kept her rooted to the spot. Harrison stepped out dressed casually in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than 3 months of her former salary. "I've been trying to reach you," he said, glancing around the busy sidewalk. "Could we speak somewhere private? I have a proposition that might interest you." 20 minutes later, they sat in a private room at an upscale cafe. Maya perched uncomfortably on the edge of a velvet chair, declining offers of food or drink. "I'll be direct," Harrison said, after ensuring they wouldn't be overheard. "Your daughter's performance the other night was remarkable. I've been unable to determine how she acquired her linguistic abilities or her knowledge of technical terminology." Maya's hands tightened around her purse. "Zoe reads everything she can get her hands on. She's been teaching herself languages since she was 3. There's no mystery, Mr. Harrison. She's simply gifted." Harrison leaned forward. "That level of giftedness doesn't just happen, Mrs. Williams. I'd like to have Zoe evaluated by specialists. If her abilities are as extraordinary as they appear, I'm prepared to offer educational opportunities that would otherwise be unavailable to her." Maya's expression remained guarded. "Why would you do that? You cost us our home, my job, and have apparently ensured I cannot find new employment. Now you want access to my child." A flash of discomfort crossed Harrison's face. "I reacted poorly that night. I was surprised and concerned about confidential information. You were embarrassed that a black child from the help understood things your rich friends couldn't," Maya said flatly. Harrison didn't deny it. "Regardless of my initial reaction, I'm offering Zoe opportunities now. All I ask is a chance to understand her capabilities through proper testing." Maya considered her dwindling options. The eviction notice had arrived yesterday. Zoe had cried when Maya explained they might need to stay at a shelter temporarily. "What kind of testing?" she finally asked. The following Monday, Zoe sat in a conference room at Harrison Global Innovations headquarters, facing a panel of experts assembled by Blake Harrison, a neuropsychologist, a linguistics professor, a child development specialist, and an education assessor. Maya sat beside her daughter, tense and protective as the specialists began their evaluation. Over 4 grueling hours, they tested Zoe in ways she'd never experienced before. She read passages in 5 languages, completed advanced mathematics problems, answered questions about history, science, and literature. She took standardized tests designed for students 3 times her age. The specialists frequently exchanged astonished glances or whispered consultations. Through it all, Zoe remained composed, though occasionally squeezing her mother's hand when questions became particularly challenging. In an adjacent observation room, Blake Harrison watched through one-way glass, his expression unreadable as Zoe continued to surpass every benchmark. When the formal testing concluded, Dr. Eleanor Chen, the neuropsychologist, conducted a final interview with Zoe while the others scored her assessments. "Zoe, how did you learn to speak so many languages, Doctor?" Chen asked gently. Zoe shrugged. "I listen, and then I know them. Books help too. And videos. I like stories in different languages. And the technical words you knew about computer systems and legal terms. How did you learn those? I read Mr. Harrington's books about computers when Mama cleaned the library. And I watched videos about law because I wanted to know why some people get in trouble for things and other people don't." The innocent response carried an unintentional weight that made Maya wince. Later, the specialist met privately with Harrison and Maya to share their findings. Mrs. Williams, Mr. Harrison, Doctor. Chen began our comprehensive assessment indicates that Zoe demonstrates extraordinary intellectual capabilities across multiple domains. Her linguistic abilities are particularly remarkable, showing native-level proficiency in 4 languages and intermediate proficiency in 3 others. Professor Lindstrom, the linguistics expert, added, "Her phonological processing is off the charts. She can distinguish and reproduce sound patterns most adults never master. Combined with her auditory memory, she essentially teaches herself languages through minimal exposure." The education assessor nodded. Academically, she's functioning at a high school level in most subjects, with particular strengths in language arts and mathematics. Her reading comprehension is at a college level. In my 30 years of evaluating gifted children, Dr. Chen concluded, I have encountered perhaps 2 others with Zoe's level of ability. She is what we would classify as profoundly gifted with an intelligence quotient above 180. Harrison, who had remained silent throughout the presentations, finally spoke. "And your recommendations?" "A completely individualized education plan," said the education specialist immediately. "Standard gifted programs would be insufficient. She needs mentors in her areas of strength acceleration in all academic subjects and social support to navigate the challenges of being so different from peers." Dr. Presley. Chen nodded. "Additionally, I'm concerned about her current situation. Profound giftedness requires significant resources and support. Without appropriate intellectual stimulation and education, children like Zoe often develop emotional and behavioral difficulties." Maya bristled. "We've managed her education fine so far. I read with her every day. I take her to the library. I answer her questions. You've done remarkably well with limited resources." "Doctor," Chen said kindly, "but Zoe's intellectual needs will only increase as she develops. She requires opportunities beyond what most public schools can provide." After the specialists departed, Harrison turned to Maya. "I'd like to offer Zoe a comprehensive educational support package. Private school tuition, enrichment programs, language tutors, whatever she needs." Maya's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why? What do you want in return?" Harrison hesitated. "I'd like your discretion regarding certain aspects of the documents Zoe translated." The real motivation hung unspoken between them: damage control. "So this is hush money," Maya said flatly. No, Harrison insisted, though his discomfort was evident. "It's an opportunity to support an extraordinary child who deserves every chance to develop her gifts. And if I refuse," Harrison's expression hardened slightly, "then we both continue as we were. You struggling to find employment with mysterious negative references, and me dealing with occasional social media speculation about a precocious child at a dinner party. But Zoe loses the most in that scenario, doesn't she?" Maya recognized the threat beneath the superficial concern. As they left the gleaming corporate headquarters, Zoe looked up at her mother. "Did I do good on the tests?" Mama Maya squeezed her daughter's hand. "You did amazing, baby. You always do." But her mind was churning with impossible choices. Accept help from the man who had orchestrated their current precarious situation, or continue to watch doors close in her face while her brilliant daughter's potential went unsupported. Later that evening, as Zoe slept on their pull-out couch in the apartment, they would soon lose. Maya made the hardest phone call of her life. "Mr. Harrison," she said when he answered, "we need to talk about your offer, but I have conditions of my own." 3 weeks later, Maya Williams adjusted her new blazer nervously as she rode the elevator to the 42nd floor of Harrison Global Innovations' downtown headquarters. The corporate ID badge clipped to her lapel still felt foreign. The photo showing a version of herself she barely recognized, hair straightened instead of in its natural curls, makeup professionally applied, expression serious and blank, businesslike. The job title beneath her name read Multicultural Communications, Liaison, a position created specifically for her as part of Harrison's arrangement. The elevator doors opened to reveal a vast, open-concept office space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Sleek workstations, glass-walled conference rooms, and casual seating areas filled the floor, populated by employees who looked nothing like Maya, predominantly white, expensively dressed, and exuding the confidence of people who had never questioned their right to occupy such spaces. Maya took a deep breath and stepped forward, remembering her daughter's excitement that morning, as she'd boarded the private shuttle to Oakwood Academy, the prestigious prep school that had suddenly discovered an opening for a place, promising scholarship student after Harrison's substantial donation. This was for Zoe. All of it was for Zoe. Mrs. Williams, a cheerful young white woman, approached, hand extended. "I'm Amber Jenkins, Mr. Harrison's executive assistant. He asked me to show you to your office and help you get settled." She pronounced the word office with slight emphasis, making it clear this was unusual for someone at Maya's level. The space Amber led her to was small but private, with a window overlooking a brick wall and basic furnishings that still surpassed anything Maya had ever had professionally. "The multicultural liaison role is new," Amber explained, her tone suggesting this was common knowledge, "so we're all excited to see how you shape it. Basically, you'll be reviewing our international communications for cultural sensitivity and language accuracy." What went unsaid but was perfectly understood. Maya was window dressing, hired to improve the company's diversity optics while keeping her and Zoe under Harrison's watchful eye. The real work would be minimal, the expectations low. Maya's first week confirmed this assessment. She received few actual assignments, spent hours in pointless orientation sessions, and endured countless curious stares and whispered comments. In the break room, conversations stopped when she entered and resumed when she left. Her invitations to meetings seemed afterthoughts, her contributions politely acknowledged, then ignored. Harrison himself maintained careful distance, their interactions limited to brief public exchanges where he performed the role of progressive CEO, giving opportunities to disadvantaged minorities. Only once did he ask about Zoe, and then only to confirm she was attending school regularly. Meanwhile, Zoe's experience at Oakwood Academy proved equally challenging. Despite testing into classes 2 grade levels above her age, she faced persistent skepticism from teachers who questioned whether her placement was merit-based or the result of the school's new diversity initiative. Classmates excluded her from social groups, whispered about her second-hand uniform, and made pointed comments about scholarship kids taking spots from more deserving students. When Zoe corrected a teacher's pronunciation of a French phrase, she was sent to the principal's office for disruptive behavior. Each evening, Maya and Zoe compared notes on their parallel experiences of isolation and subtle discrimination in these privileged spaces. They had traded housing insecurity for social rejection, financial struggle for cultural alienation. Their new apartment, paid for through Maya's suspiciously generous relocation package, was larger and safer than their previous home, but felt temporarily contingent on their continued compliance with unspoken rules. Everything changed in Maya's third week when Harrison's company entered final negotiations with Systèmes de Sécurité Laval, the French security firm that had been the subject of the infamous translated contract. Maya was unexpectedly included in the meeting due to a last-minute request for a native French speaker to assist with nuanced terminology. Initially relegating her to the back of the room, the team was forced to involve her more directly when communication difficulties arose with the French executives. Mrs. Williams Harrison said with barely concealed reluctance, "Perhaps you could clarify the concerns about Section 4. Maya reviewed the documentation, conscious of the room's attention. As she examined the contract more thoroughly, she noticed concerning discrepancies between the English and French versions. The English translation softened language about data collection practices, obscured user consent requirements, and omitted key privacy protections present in the French original. "Mr. Harrison," she said carefully, "there are significant differences between these versions that could create legal vulnerabilities. The French text promises user protections that aren't reflected in your English implementation plan." The room fell silent. Harrison's expression darkened momentarily before he forced a smile. "Thank you for your thorough review. We'll address those details later." But Maya continued her responsibility to vulnerable users, outweighing her precarious position. Additionally, this implementation timeline doesn't allow for the community impact assessment required under EU regulations. The accelerated deployment would primarily affect lower-income neighborhoods where your free-tier product has highest adoption rates. She pointed to specific clauses. These communities would essentially become test subjects without proper notification or consent. François Laval, the French company's founder, leaned forward with interest. This is precisely our concern as well. We developed this technology to protect users, not exploit them. Harrison shot Maya a warning look before smoothly changing the subject, but the damage was done. After the meeting, he cornered her in the hallway. "That was inappropriate, Mrs. Williams. Your role is translation, not strategy or ethics." Maya met his gaze steadily. "My role is multicultural communications. This plan communicates something very different to French regulators than to American users, particularly in disadvantaged communities. That seems directly relevant to my position." Harrison's jaw tightened. "Let me be clear. Your position exists because I created it. Your daughter attends Oakwood because I arranged it. Your apartment lease is guaranteed by my company. All of that can change if this arrangement becomes inconvenient." The threat hung between them, explicit and chilling. Maya fought to keep her voice steady. "Is that why you hired me, Mr. Harrison? To help you exploit people like me?" Something flickered across Harrison's face, discomfort, perhaps even shame, before his expression hardened again. "I hired you because your daughter embarrassed me publicly. This arrangement keeps that incident contained while providing opportunities you couldn't otherwise access. Don't mistake it for anything more." That evening, Maya found Zoe sitting quietly on their apartment balcony, school books untouched beside her. "Rough day sunshine?" Maya asked, joining her daughter. Zoe nodded, tears welling. "Brittany Harrington is in my grade. She told everyone her mom says you're only working for Mr. Harrison because you know secrets about him. The other kids say I'm only at Oakwood because grown-ups feel sorry for me." Maya pulled her daughter close. "People say unkind things when they're afraid of what makes others special," she said, choosing her words carefully. "You're at Oakwood because you're brilliant. I'm at Harrison Global because I have skills they need, even if they don't always want to admit it." But as Zoe fell asleep that night, Maya remained awake, questioning their Faustian bargain. The opportunities were real, but so were the costs: dignity, autonomy, integrity. She opened her laptop and began researching Harrison Global's business practices more thoroughly, particularly their deployment of free security software in predominantly minority neighborhoods. What she discovered turned her stomach. The company's flagship consumer product, ostensibly offering protection from hackers and identity theft, contained sophisticated monitoring capabilities that harvested user data far beyond what was disclosed in terms of service. This data, including browsing habits, location information, and even microphone access, was aggregated and sold to data brokers, advertisers, and in some cases law enforcement agencies without warrants. The communities most aggressively targeted for free software deployment were precisely those with least access to privacy education and legal recourse. Maya recognized the pattern immediately. Digital redlining, a high-tech version of the same predatory practices that had targeted minority communities for generations. The French contract would expand this model internationally, starting with immigrant neighborhoods in Paris, Marseille, and Lyon. Maya closed her laptop, a cold certainty settling in her chest. She was being paid to help facilitate the very systems designed to exploit people like her daughter, their former neighbors. The prestigious job title, the expensive apartment, Zoe's elite education, all of it purchased with the expected sacrifice of her conscience. The question was no longer whether she could afford to challenge Harrison, but whether she could afford not to. Maya arrived at work Monday morning to find an all-staff email announcing the successful acquisition of Systèmes de Sécurité Laval, with implementation beginning immediately. The concerns she had raised in the meeting had been ignored completely. Rather than the required community assessments, the company had simply reworded user agreements to further obscure their data collection practices. When she opened the attached deployment schedule, her blood ran cold. The first phase targeted 5 low-income neighborhoods with high immigrant populations, including Roxbury, where they had previously lived. These communities would receive free security suite subscriptions through local schools and community centers, effectively turning thousands of vulnerable families into unwitting data sources. Maya tried scheduling a meeting with Harrison, but was rebuffed by his assistant. "He's extremely busy with the acquisition rollout," Amber explained with artificial sympathy. "Perhaps you could send your concerns in an email." Knowing an email would be easily ignored, Maya instead requested the implementation documentation, citing her need to review the multicultural messaging. The files she received revealed even more disturbing details. The software included keylogging functionality, screen recording capabilities, and remote access features that would allow company technicians to access devices without user notification. Most alarmingly, the Community Safety Enhancement module would automatically flag and report certain search terms and communications to local authorities, effectively turning the security software into a surveillance tool disproportionately deployed in Black and immigrant neighborhoods. That evening, Zoe came home from school with tear-stained cheeks and a note from her teacher. The prestigious science competition team had rejected her application despite her perfect qualifying scores. The stated reason was concerns about team dynamics and maturity factors, transparent code for not wanting the young Black scholarship student representing the school. They said, "I'm too different," and would make the team uncomfortable at competitions. Zoe explained, her voice small. "Madison's mom is the coach, and she told Madison I only got into Oakwood because Mr. Harrison felt sorry for my mom being a maid." Maya held her daughter, rage and heartbreak warring in her chest. "Baby, you are different," she said finally. "You're extraordinary in ways that scare them. But that's their problem, not yours." "Then why does it hurt me instead of them?" Zoe asked, with the devastating clarity of a child. Maya had no answer that wouldn't sound like a hollow platitude. The next morning, Maya requested a meeting with Zoe's principal to discuss the science team rejection. Dr. 8. Phillips received her with the practiced patience of someone humoring a parent who didn't understand how things work at an elite institution. "Mrs. Williams, while Zoe's academic abilities are certainly noteworthy, there are many factors that go into team selection. Social integration, emotional maturity, presentation skills. All subjective criteria that mysteriously disadvantage my daughter Maya," interrupted. "Her test scores were perfect. Her project proposal was innovative enough that Miss Project Proposal was innovative enough that Miss Project Proposal was innovative." Harrington apparently shared it with her own daughter. Dr. Phillips's expression cooled. "I understand this is disappointing, but Oakwood has maintained its prestigious reputation through careful cultivation of student representatives. Perhaps Zoe would be more comfortable in the debate club or chess team where her intensity might be an asset rather than a liability." The message was clear: Zoe could attend their school thanks to Harrison's influence, but she would not be allowed to shine too brightly or represent them publicly. Returning to her office, Maya found an invitation to the company's quarterly board meeting, where Harrison would be presenting the Laval acquisition strategy. Normally, someone at her level would never attend such a meeting, but Harrison's commitment to diverse perspectives meant including a token representative from the multicultural division. Maya spent the evening preparing detailed notes on the ethical and legal vulnerabilities of the deployment strategy, focusing particularly on potential violations of EU privacy regulations and disparate impact concerns in minority communities. She arrived early for the meeting, taking her assigned seat at the far end of the massive conference table. As board members and executives filtered in, several did double takes upon seeing her, their expressions ranging from confusion to amusement. Harrison entered last, faltering momentarily when he noticed Maya before smoothly taking his place at the head of the table. The meeting proceeded with financial projections, marketing strategies, and technical implementation plans for the newly acquired French technology. The presentation was slick, the expected revenue substantial. When Harrison opened the floor for questions, Maya raised her hand. The room fell awkwardly silent as Harrison reluctantly acknowledged her. "Mrs. Williams, our multicultural liaison, has some input." This should be interesting." His tone carried a warning she chose to ignore. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison," Maya said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I've reviewed the implementation documentation for the Laval acquisition, and I have serious concerns about both legal compliance and ethical implications." She distributed the analysis she had prepared. The targeted deployment in specific demographic communities, combined with the undisclosed surveillance capabilities, creates significant liability under EU privacy laws and potential civil rights violations domestically. The board members exchanged glances ranging from dismissive to concerned. Furthermore, Maya continued the keylogging, and remote access features exceed the scope of the consented use cases in our terms of service. This creates substantial legal exposure, particularly given the focus on minority neighborhoods for initial deployment. Harrison's expression had darkened dangerously, but Maya pressed on. "I'm especially concerned about the automatic reporting features being implemented in Roxbury-Dorchester and similar communities without transparent disclosure to users." "That's quite enough, Mrs. Williams." Harrison interrupted sharply. "These are complex business decisions beyond the scope of your role." Bernard Collins, the oldest board member, peered at Maya over his glasses. "Young lady, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, these strategies have been carefully developed by our legal and business teams with extensive market research. Market research that views certain communities as easier targets due to limited resources to challenge privacy violations." Maya responded evenly. Harrison stood, effectively ending the discussion. "Thank you for your input, Mrs. Williams. We'll take it under advisement. Perhaps you'd like to be excused for the remainder of the meeting, as we discuss confidential board matters." The dismissal was unmistakable. As Maya gathered her documents, another board member whispered loudly enough for her to hear, "Where did you find this one, Blake, the Diversity Hire Us catalog?" Suppressed laughter followed her out the door. Maya returned to her office to find her computer access restricted and her email redirected. Within an hour, Amber arrived with HR personnel to escort her from the building, citing confidentiality concerns and placing her on administrative leave pending review. By evening, Maya received an email terminating her employment for unauthorized access of confidential materials and breach of fiduciary responsibility. The message included notice that her company's subsidized apartment lease would end in 30 days, and Zoe's scholarship status at Oakwood would be reviewed at semester end. They had been cut off completely. Meanwhile, Zoe faced her own crisis at school. Word had somehow spread about Maya's dismissal, leading to open taunting from classmates. "Guess you'll be back in public school where you belong," Madison Harrington told her during lunch. "My mom says your mom tried to blackmail Mr. Harrison and got caught." That afternoon, Zoe's French teacher accused her of cheating on an advanced translation assignment, claiming no child your age could possibly understand these subjunctive constructions without outside help. Despite Zoe's tearful explanation of her language acquisition process, the teacher gave her a 0 and detention for academic dishonesty and disrespectful attitude. When Maya arrived to pick up her daughter, Zoe ran to the car and collapsed in tears. "I hate it here," she sobbed. "They don't care what's true. They already decided what to believe about us." Maya held her daughter, making a decision that had been building for weeks. "Then we stopped trying to make them believe anything she said," quietly. "We know our truth. That's enough." That night they packed essential belongings and vacated the apartment, moving into a modest extended stay hotel Maya paid for with her rapidly dwindling savings. She drafted emails to several journalists who covered technology and privacy issues, attaching key documents she had saved from the Harrison Global Implementation Plan. She hesitated before pressing send, knowing this would burn every bridge Harrison had built for them, precarious as those bridges were. Mama Zoe asked, watching her mother's conflicted expression. "Are we doing something wrong?" Maya looked at her brilliant, perceptive child, who had already faced more discrimination and rejection than most adults. "No sunshine. Sometimes, doing what's right means powerful people will be angry with you. But that doesn't make it wrong." She pressed send. "Have you ever had to choose between comfortable security and doing what's right?" Comment number 1. If you believe Maya made the right choice exposing Harrison's unethical practices. Or number 2, if you think she should have protected her job and Zoe's education at all costs. Like this video if you've ever witnessed someone standing up against injustice despite personal risk. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about moral courage and speaking truth to power. What would you do if you discovered your employer was targeting vulnerable communities? And how do you think Harrison will respond to Maya potentially exposing his company's secret surveillance practices? Let's continue with what happened next in this unfolding drama. Blake Harrison stared at the blaring headline on his tablet, "Tech Giant Accused of Predatory Surveillance in Minority Communities." The accompanying article, published in the technology section of a major newspaper, detailed Harrison Global's alleged strategy of deploying surveillance software disguised as security protection in predominantly black and immigrant neighborhoods. It cited internal documents and an anonymous whistleblower with knowledge of the company's integration plans for the recently acquired French security firm. Though Maya wasn't named, Harrison knew immediately. He slammed the tablet down, barking orders to his crisis management team to contain the damage. By noon, the company had issued strong denials, threatened legal action against the publication, and launched an internal investigation to identify the source of the fabricated documents. The stock price dropped 8% before stabilization measures kicked in. As days passed, the story gained traction. Privacy advocates demanded investigation. Community organizations in targeted neighborhoods organized protests outside Harrison Global offices. Technology reviewers began examining the company's software, finding evidence supporting the whistleblower's claims. European regulators announced a formal inquiry into potential privacy law violations. Harrison's carefully constructed public image as a progressive tech visionary began unraveling under scrutiny. Meanwhile, Maya and Zoe adjusted to dramatically changed circumstances. After leaving the corporate apartment, they moved into a modest two-bedroom rental in a working-class neighborhood far from Oakwood Academy. Maya withdrew Zoe from the prestigious school, enrolling her instead in a small, progressive institution that embraced her exceptional abilities without exploiting them as tokens. Living on savings and freelance translation work, they maintained a simple but stable life. Maya declined all media requests. Her whistleblowing intended to protect vulnerable communities, not to gain publicity or revenge. One evening, 6 weeks after the story broke, Maya answered a knock at their apartment door to find Blake Harrison standing in the hallway. He looked different, disheveled, exhausted, without the polished arrogance that had defined him. "May I come in?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. Maya's instinct was to refuse, but curiosity won out. She allowed him inside, keeping Zoe behind her protectively. Harrison stood awkwardly in their small living room, taking in the modest furnishings and walls covered with Zoe's artwork and academic certificates. "I wanted to see," he began, then stopped, recalibrating. "I needed to understand why." Maya gestured for him to sit, positioning herself between him and Zoe. "I think you know why, Mr. Harrison. Your company was planning to exploit the same communities that already faced discrimination and surveillance. You were going to turn their desire for protection into a weapon against them." Harrison's gaze dropped to his hands. "It wasn't supposed to be like that. The technology was meant to provide security. The data collection was just business. Every tech company does it. Not every company specifically targets vulnerable neighborhoods for more invasive surveillance," Maya countered. "Not every company automatically reports certain searches to authorities only in specific communities." Something in Harrison's expression shifted. The board pushed for aggressive monetization. The demographic targeting was presented as market efficiency. He looked up, meeting her gaze directly. "But you're right. I approved it. I didn't question it enough." The admission surprised Maya. She had expected denials, threats, perhaps even bribery attempts to retract her claims. "Why are you here, Mr. Harrison?" Harrison's eyes moved to Zoe, who watched him with undisguised suspicion. "The EU investigation is going to reveal everything anyway. We've been forced to pause the implementation pending regulatory review." He paused. "The board is looking for someone to blame. They're building a case against you, claiming you stole documents, misunderstood technical specifications, acted out of personal vendetta. Maya tensed. And did you come to warn me or threaten me? Neither. Both. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. I came because I can't stop thinking about what you said in that board meeting, about who we were really targeting and why, and about what happened at Oakwood with Zoe. He turned toward the child. I heard about how they treated you. I'm sorry. Zoe regarded him coolly. They weren't mean because of you. They were mean because of who they decided Mama and I are. The simple clarity of her statement hung in the room. Harrison nodded slowly. You're right. And I decided the same thing when I met you both. He returned his attention to Maya. The French company is threatening to withdraw from the acquisition. Francois Laval contacted me directly. He said their technology was developed to protect privacy, not compromise it. He asked if the reports were true. And what did you tell him? Maya asked. I haven't answered yet, Harrison admitted. Because any honest response would confirm everything you exposed. He stood abruptly, moving to the window. The board wants me to deny everything, discredit you, and proceed with a modified version of the same strategy with better concealment. Maya watched him carefully. And what do you want? Harrison turned, his expression conflicted. I don't know anymore. I built this company believing technology could solve problems. Somewhere along the way, people became the problem to be solved or exploited. He paused. The privacy violations, the targeting. I justified it as business necessity, but seeing it through your eyes, through Zoe's experience at that school, I pushed her into. I can't unsee it now. Maya remained silent, unwilling to make this moment of awakening easier for him. Harrison continued, his words coming faster now. The surveillance features weren't even my idea originally. They were added incrementally, each small step seeming reasonable in isolation. The demographic targeting was presented as community outreach. The reporting functions as public safety enhancements. Every invasive feature wrapped in benevolent language that I never questioned. He looked directly at Maya, until you questioned it. For the first time, Maya recognized genuine turmoil behind Harrison's carefully constructed facade. What happens now? She asked. The board meets tomorrow to determine next steps. They want to sue you, discredit you, and continue with slightly modified plans. He hesitated. I have enough voting shares to block them, but not without consequences. And why would you do that? Maya pressed. Because you're right, Harrison said simply. And I've spent weeks trying to convince myself you weren't looking for justifications, alternate interpretations. But I can't find them. He glanced at Zoe, who had moved closer to her mother. When she translated that contract at the dinner party, she didn't just reveal our surveillance capabilities. She exposed something I'd become blind to in myself. The admission hung between them, unexpectedly vulnerable. Maya considered her response carefully. Mr. Harrison, I didn't expose your company's practices for revenge or personal gain. I did it because those practices would harm communities that already face discrimination daily. Communities like the one where Zoe and I lived before you created a position to keep us quiet. Harrison nodded slowly. I know. That's why I'm here. Not to threaten or negotiate, but to tell you I'm going to do what should have been done when you first raised these concerns. I'm going to stop it. After Harrison left, Maya sat with Zoe on their small balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant orange and purple. Do you think he means it? Mama Zoe asked. About stopping the bad things his company was doing, Maya wrapped an arm around her daughter. I don't know, sunshine. People like Mr. Harrison aren't used to changing course once they've decided on a direction. But sometimes, seeing the world through new eyes can change even the most stubborn mind. She kissed the top of Zoe's head. What I do know is that you helped him see something he'd been ignoring. Sometimes that's the most important first step. The following morning, Maya received a text message from an unknown number board meeting in 30 minutes. Whatever happens next, thank you for making me see. She turned on financial news just in time to see breaking coverage of unusual activity at Harrison Global Innovations. The emergency board meeting of Harrison Global Innovations began with tension thickening the air of the 44th floor conference room. Blake Harrison entered last, his normally impeccable appearance, replaced by deliberate casualness jeans, untucked button-down shirt, no tie. The board members, 11 white men and 1 Asian woman, exchanged concerned glances at this breach of unwritten dress code. Board Chairman Walter Montgomery called the meeting to order with thinly veiled irritation. Given recent disruptions, we've prepared a comprehensive strategy to address the privacy allegations and whistleblower situation. He nodded to the chief legal officer who distributed thick folders. Our team has developed a 3-pronged approach: vigorous denial of all specific allegations, legal action against both the publications and the presumed source, and a modified implementation plan with enhanced confidentiality measures. Harrison flipped through the document without comment as Montgomery continued. We've identified Maya Williams as the likely source of the leaked documents. Our legal team has prepared termination with cause documentation, civil complaints for breach of confidentiality, and potential criminal referrals for unauthorized access of proprietary information. The CLO highlighted specific sections. We've also prepared a public relations strategy framing Mrs. Williams as a disgruntled former employee with limited technical understanding who misinterpreted standard industry practices. We'll emphasize her lack of qualifications while avoiding any direct references to race to prevent discrimination countersuits. Harrison closed the folder and pushed it away. "No," he said quietly. The room fell silent. Montgomery leaned forward. "Excuse me." "No," Harrison repeated louder this time. "We won't be doing any of this." He stood walking to the window overlooking the city below. "The allegations aren't false. The documents aren't misinterpreted. Our implementation plan specifically targeted minority neighborhoods for enhanced surveillance without adequate disclosure. That's not standard industry practice, it's predatory and potentially illegal." Board members shifted uncomfortably as Harrison turned to face them. "I've spent the past week personally reviewing every element of the Laval integration plan. The surveillance capabilities, the demographic targeting, the automatic reporting features. All of it." He met each person's gaze individually. "And I've come to a conclusion: Maya Williams was right." Montgomery's face flushed crimson. "Blake, this is completely inappropriate. We have a fiduciary duty to shareholders. To build sustainable value, Harrison interrupted, not to exploit vulnerable communities until regulators shut us down. The EU investigation alone could result in fines of up to 4% of global revenue. The potential class action lawsuits from targeted neighborhoods would be financially devastating and a PR nightmare. The CFO cleared her throat nervously. "Mr. Harrison does have a point about regulatory risk. The European investigators have already requested extensive documentation." Harrison pressed his advantage. "Beyond legal risk, there's the simple reality that what we planned was wrong. We deliberately targeted communities with less power and resources for more invasive surveillance, then disguised it as protection. We designed systems to monitor and report on specific populations more aggressively than others." Montgomery slammed his hand on the table. "That's called market segmentation and targeted product development. Every successful company does it, not like this Harrison countered. Not by turning security products into surveillance tools specifically in Black and immigrant neighborhoods. Not by collecting data that users never meaningfully consented to provide." He placed his own document on the table. "I'm proposing an alternative approach: complete transparency about current data practices. Redesign products with privacy as the default. Elimination of all demographic targeting for surveillance features. And withdrawal of any legal threats against Maya Williams." The board erupted in protests, multiple members speaking over each other until Montgomery shouted for order. "This is corporate suicide," the chairman declared. "Your proposal would destroy our secondary revenue streams and data licensing agreements. It would invalidate our entire business model." "Then our business model needs to change," Harrison stated firmly. "Because the current one depends on deception and exploitation." Montgomery's expression turned calculating. "You seem to have forgotten something important, Blake. While you're the founder and CEO, you're no longer the majority shareholder. The board can remove you if your judgment is deemed compromised." Harrison smiled thinly. I still control 42% of voting shares. Combined with the 7% held by the employee stock program which I influence as CEO, you can't remove me without a prolonged and public fight. He leaned forward. A fight where I would be forced to disclose exactly why you're trying to oust me for refusing to implement predatory surveillance in minority communities. The threat hung in the air as board members calculated political and financial implications. Harrison continued, "Additionally, I've already spoken with François Laval. The French company is prepared to withdraw from our acquisition unless we commit to ethical implementation of their technology. That would trigger the break clause and a $200 million penalty." Montgomery's face paled. "You had no authority to communicate directly with Laval at this stage." "As CEO, I have every authority to discuss implementation concerns with our acquisition partner," Harrison countered, "especially when those concerns involve potential regulatory violations." He distributed his alternative proposal to each board member. This approach rebuilds trust, mitigates legal exposure, and creates sustainable value without exploiting vulnerable users. It's not just ethically sound, it's better business long-term. The boardroom fell into tense silence as members reviewed the document. Finally, Janet Chen, the sole woman on the board, spoke up. "Blake's regulatory concerns are valid. The EU investigation alone could cost us hundreds of millions in fines and legal fees, and the market is already responding negatively to the privacy allegations. We're down 12% since the story broke." Montgomery shot her a betrayed look as she continued. "I move we adopt a modified version of Blake's proposal with a committee to evaluate financial implications of each element before full implementation." Another board member, younger than most, nodded. "I second." The landscape around privacy is changing. Getting ahead of regulation could position us advantageously against competitors who'll be forced to change later. The conversation shifted to pragmatic concerns, implementation timelines, revenue impact projections, messaging strategy. Harrison watched as self-interest gradually aligned with his ethical stance, the board recognizing that the path of exploitation had become too risky. 3 hours later, Harrison emerged from the boardroom with a compromise. The most egregious surveillance features would be eliminated. Immediately, demographic targeting would be phased out over 6 months, and a new privacy-forward approach would be developed with external ethics advisors. Most importantly, all legal threats against Maya Williams were withdrawn. As he returned to his office, Harrison sent another text message. "First step taken. Board agreed to core changes. No legal action against you. More work ahead. Thank you." Maya read the message with cautious optimism. Years of experience had taught her to distrust sudden transformations, especially from the powerful. Yet something in Harrison's demeanor during his visit had suggested genuine awakening rather than strategic repositioning. The next morning brought confirmation in the form of Harrison Global's unexpected press release, "Harrison Global announces Privacy First Initiative." The statement acknowledged legitimate concerns raised about certain planned features and committed to industry-leading privacy protections for all users, regardless of demographic factors. Financial analysts expressed shock at the company's abrupt strategy shift, with stock prices initially dropping further before stabilizing, as privacy advocates cautiously welcomed the announcement. 3 days later, Maya received another text. "Would you be willing to meet neutral location? No lawyers or PR people. Just conversation." She agreed with hesitation, suggesting a public park where Zoe could play within sight while they talked. Harrison arrived without entourage or security, dressed casually, and carrying 2 coffee cups. "I thought you might want this," he said, offering one to Maya. "I remember you preferred dark roast." The gesture, remembering such a small detail about someone he had effectively considered beneath him, signaled a shift, however minor. They sat on a bench, watching Zoe navigate the playground with characteristic focus and determination. "The board nearly fired me," Harrison began without preamble. "They might still. I had to compromise more than I wanted on implementation timeline." Maya sipped her coffee. "But the core changes." "The targeting elimination, non-negotiable," Harrison confirmed. "Already underway. I brought in an external ethics team to audit everything and recommend additional changes. He watched Zoe organize younger children into some complex game of her own design. She's remarkable. Maya's expression remained guarded. Yes, she always has been. I've been thinking about the first time I saw her at that dinner party, Harrison said quietly. I was so angry, so embarrassed that this child understood something the adults in the room didn't. But it wasn't just about the translation. What was it about? Maya asked. Harrison considered before answering. Control. My entire life has been about maintaining control, of narratives, of outcomes, of people's perceptions. Zoe represented something I couldn't control or predict, and it terrified me. He turned to face Maya directly. What I did afterward, offering you a job, Zoe, a school placement, I told myself it was generosity opportunity, but it was really about regaining control, containing what I perceived as a threat. The admission hung between them, unexpectedly honest. And now, Maya prompted. Now I'm trying to learn how to use whatever influence I have for actual good, not just the appearance of it, Harrison said. Starting with fixing what I broke. He hesitated. Which brings me to why I asked to meet. I'd like to offer you a position. Maya's expression hardened immediately. I'm not interested in another token role. Not at Harrison Global, he clarified quickly. The board created an independent ethics foundation as part of our settlement with EU regulators, separate legal entity independent funding oversight authority for our privacy practices. They need a director who understands both the technical and human implications of privacy policies, someone who's demonstrated courage and integrity when confronted with ethical challenges. Maya's surprise must have shown on her face. Harrison continued, You'd report to an independent board, not to me or anyone at Harrison Global. You'd have authority to investigate concerns, recommend changes, and publish findings without corporate approval. Essentially, you'd be the conscience we've been missing. Why me, Maya asked directly. Why not a privacy lawyer or ethics professor with relevant credentials? Because you saw what we were doing and were willing to risk everything to stop it, Harrison replied. Technical knowledge can be acquired. That kind of moral clarity is rare. He glanced toward Zoe. Besides, you have a personal understanding of how technology can be weaponized against certain communities. That perspective is essential and largely absent from privacy discussions. Maya considered the offer suspicion warring with pragmatism. I'd need complete independence, guaranteed funding regardless of findings, full access to documentation and systems. Already built into the Foundation Charter, Harrison confirmed. EU regulators insisted on it. He handed her a folder. All the details are here. Take time to review it, consult an attorney if you wish. This isn't a decision to make lightly. As he stood to leave, Harrison added, Whatever you decide, I want to thank you. You forced me to see something I'd been deliberately ignoring, not just about my company, but about myself. Maya watched him walk away, the folder heavy in her hands. Zoe bounded over cheeks flushed from play. Was that the bad billionaire man? She asked, eyeing Harrison's retreating figure. I'm not sure he's entirely bad, Maya answered thoughtfully. Just someone who forgot to question whether because we can't is the same as because we should. Zoe considered this with characteristic intensity. People can learn, right, Mama? Even grown-ups. Maya pulled her daughter close. Especially grown-up sunshine. Sometimes we just need someone brave enough to show us what we're refusing to see. 1 year later, Maya Williams stood at the podium in the Grand Ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton addressing the inaugural Privacy and Equity Summit organized by the Harrison Global Ethics Foundation. The audience of technology executives, privacy advocates, regulators, and community representatives listened attentively as she outlined the Foundation's achievements and ongoing challenges. When we began this journey, Maya concluded many questioned whether meaningful privacy protections could coexist with technological innovation. Over the past 12 months, we've demonstrated not only that they can coexist, but that they must if technology is to serve humanity rather than exploit it. Applause followed as she introduced the next speaker, François Laval, whose security company had become a model for privacy-preserving technology under its revised partnership with Harrison Global. As Maya took her seat in the front row, she caught Blake Harrison's eye from across the stage. He nodded slightly, a gesture of respect between cautious allies rather than friends. Their relationship remained professionally cordial but perpetually complicated, defined by both conflict and reluctant collaboration. After initially hesitating, Maya had accepted the foundation directorship with specific conditions: complete independence, substantial resources, and authority to publish unfiltered findings. The past year had tested those conditions repeatedly, as the foundation exposed problematic practices, not just at Harrison Global, but throughout the technology sector. Under Maya's leadership, the foundation had published groundbreaking research on algorithmic discrimination, developed privacy education programs for underserved communities, and established the industry's first comprehensive equity impact assessment framework for new technologies. Most significantly, they had worked with community organizations in previously targeted neighborhoods to implement genuine protection systems controlled by residents themselves rather than distant corporations. At 42, he cut an impressive figure in his tailored charcoal suit, his dark blonde hair artfully styled to disguise early thinning, his smile practiced and camera-ready. He was trailed by two assistants who carried sleek leather portfolios and managed his schedule down to the minute. Charles Victoria Harrison boomed air, kissing Mrs. Harrington and firmly shaking her husband's hand. Stunning place, absolutely stunning. The reception following the summit presentations buzzed with conversation as attendees networked across traditional boundaries. Privacy advocates engaged with corporate executives, community organizers, consulted with regulators. Technologists debated with ethicists. In a quiet corner, Zoe Williams, now 7 years old, demonstrated her language learning application to a group of impressed educators. The child had developed the concept during the tumultuous period after leaving Oakwood Academy initially as a way to help other immigrant children maintain connection with their heritage languages. With support from the foundation, the app had expanded to offer free language instruction in 20 languages, with particular emphasis on preserving indigenous and endangered linguistic traditions. "She's created something remarkable," Harrison commented, appearing beside Maya as she watched her daughter. "The user growth metrics are impressive even by Silicon Valley standards." Maya smiled. She doesn't think in metrics. For her, it's about helping people communicate across boundaries. "The best innovations usually are," Harrison acknowledged, "though I didn't understand that until recently." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, their complicated history hovering unspoken between them. "The Foundation Board approved your proposal for the Community-Controlled Data Initiative," Harrison said finally. "Full funding for 3 years with community organizations holding majority governance rights." Maya nodded. "It's an important step. Technology decisions affecting communities should be made by those communities, not imposed from outside." Throughout this work, Harrison had maintained his commitment to the Foundation's independence, even when its findings created challenges for his company. The board's threatened coup had never materialized, partly because Harrison's new direction ultimately proved financially sound. As privacy regulations tightened globally, Harrison Global's early adaptation positioned it advantageously against competitors facing costly emergency overhauls. "What matters is what we do once we understand." The evening concluded with a special presentation recognizing young innovators developing technology for social good. Zoe was the youngest honoree, receiving a grant to expand her language preservation project. As she accepted the award, her poise and articulation belied her age. "My mama taught me that languages aren't just words," she told the audience. "They're ways of seeing the world. When we lose a language, we lose a whole way of understanding things." She glanced at Maya with a smile. "And sometimes understanding something in a different language helps you see what was hidden in your own." The symbolism wasn't lost on those familiar with how this unlikely partnership began, with a child's translation exposing uncomfortable truths. As guests departed, Harrison approached Maya and Zoe with an envelope. "I've been meaning to give you this for some time," he said, handing it to Zoe. "I believe I owe you something." Inside was a check for 3% of the Laval acquisition value, exactly the commission Harrison had offhandedly offered at the dinner party where everything began. The amount, $6 million. Maya gasped, instinctively moving to return it. "We can't accept this." "It's not for you," Harrison clarified, addressing Zoe directly. "It's payment for services rendered held in trust until you're old enough to decide how to use it. A contract is a contract after all." Zoe studied the check thoughtfully. "That's a lot of money." "It is," Harrison agreed, "though considerably less than the value your translation ultimately created, both financially for my company and in less tangible ways." He knelt to meet her eye level, something the old Blake Harrison would never have done. "Your translation that night didn't just expose problems in a contract. It exposed problems in how I saw the world and my place in it." Zoe considered this with characteristic seriousness. "Money is just a tool like technology," she said finally. "It depends who's using it and why." Harrison blinked once again, caught off guard by her insight. "Exactly right." Later that night, as Maya tucked Zoe into bed in their modest but comfortable new home, the child asked a question that had clearly been on her mind. "Mama, are we rich now?" Maya smoothed her daughter's curls. "The money is in a trust for your future sunshine. But yes, it means you'll have opportunities and security I couldn't have imagined at your age." Zoe frowned slightly. "But we're not going to be like those people at the Harringtons' party, right? The ones who thought they were better than everybody else." "No," Maya promised. "We'll never be those people. Having money doesn't change who we are or what we value." She kissed her daughter's forehead. "Remember what we always say," Zoe smiled. "Our worth isn't in our wallet. It's in how we treat people and the good we put into the world." "Exactly right," Maya echoed Harrison's earlier words, realizing some truths transcended the boundaries of class and privilege once people were willing to hear them. The following morning, Maya received a package at the foundation office. Inside was a framed item, the original French contract from the dinner party with a post-it note in Harrison's handwriting. A reminder that sometimes the most important translations aren't between languages, but between worldviews. "Thank you both for helping me see what I was refusing to read." Maya placed the frame on her office wall, not as a trophy of victory, but as a reminder that transformation, while rarely easy or complete, remained always possible. What an incredible journey we've witnessed. From a shocking moment of translation to a complete transformation of lives and an entire company. Has this story changed how you think about the power of standing up for what's right even when it seems impossible? Comment below with what inspired you most about Maya and Zoe's courage. Did you find yourself empathizing with Harrison's awakening, or were you more moved by the Williams' integrity in the face of pressure? Like this video, if you believe that one person's brave actions can create ripples of change far beyond what they imagine. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of courage, truth, and transformation against all odds. And please share this video with someone who might need inspiration to speak their truth today. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember that sometimes the most important words are the ones we have the courage to speak when everyone else remains silent. This powerful story teaches us that brilliance exists everywhere, regardless of race, class, or background. We just need the courage to recognize it. Maya and Zoe's journey shows how systems of privilege often dismiss extraordinary talent based on preconceived notions about who is worthy of opportunity. True worth isn't measured by social status or wealth, but by integrity and moral courage. The narrative exposes how institutions, from elite schools to powerful corporations, perpetuate discrimination while maintaining an illusion of progressiveness. Harrison's transformation demonstrates that even those benefiting from unjust systems can awaken to their role in perpetuating harm, though this awakening typically requires direct confrontation from those they've underestimated. Most importantly, the story highlights how seemingly small moments of courage can spark transformative change far beyond what we imagine possible. Zoe's refusal to hide her abilities, despite social pressure, became the catalyst for exposing corporate wrongdoing and ultimately reforming an entire industry. The lesson is clear: our voices matter, especially when speaking uncomfortable truths. Real change requires both the courage of the marginalized to speak up and the willingness of the privileged to truly listen, reflect, and take meaningful action, not just manage their public image. What moment in this story resonated with you most deeply? Was it Zoe's courage at the dinner party, Maya's principled stand against exploitation, or Harrison's journey toward genuine accountability? Comment below and share your Zoe's thoughts. Have you ever witnessed someone being underestimated because of their background only to prove everyone wrong, like this video? If you believe everyone deserves respect regardless of their circumstances, and subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage against overwhelming odds. Did this story change how you think about privilege and opportunity in society? Share this video with someone who might need inspiration to stand up for themselves or others today. Thank you for joining us on this journey of transformation. Remember that sometimes the smallest voices can create the most powerful changes in our world.